Again, thank you so much for being here today. I'm just going to jump right in. I saw Blue Moon a couple months back at Telluride, and I absolutely loved it. And I've been a great admirer of your and Rick's work over the years. You and Rick spoke about um, taking and making this project, and it took years to make. Um, and that it wasn't the right time to make it, but now is the right time. What about both of you thought that this was the right time to make the film, and what were the sort of changes that you saw in yourself as a person, as an actor, since when you first read the script and made you understand and relate to Lorenz Hart?
Well, it's like my dog is barking, but one of the, stop it. One of the things that's so fascinating about Richard Linklater's whole methodology is how incredibly patient he is. He really thinks on a movie a long time before he makes it, and part of that is due to he knows how outside the box a lot of his interests are, and that there isn't a lot of room for error. If you're trying to make a movie in real time at the opening night party of Oklahoma, if it's the bullseye is very small. There's not a lot of room for mistakes. It doesn't have it. It rests on the. It's so execution dependent whether or not that could ever work. A lot of people would read the script and not think it was a movie at all, you know. But Rick just meditates on it and meditates on it, and that takes time. So there was one aspect which was just sitting with Robert and me and reading it out loud, um, and hearing the voices and pruning the rose bush, just making sure the screenplay was a sparkling diamond. Um, and that takes time. And so that was one aspect. The other aspect, Rick first sent me this script when we were finishing Boyhood, and I was just over 40. And he knew Lorenz Hart needed to look like he was on death's door. So he needed to wait for me to age up a little bit. Um, there's that aspect. And the other aspect is that I think I grew a lot, I didn't just age. I think I grew a lot in the last 10 years in regards in my relationship to my own profession. And I learned a lot about voice and speech and body and movement and all the things that were going to be required to unlock Larry. Uh, and so it all worked. And it's a little mysterious what Rick's process is. We just, about every other year, we'd get together and workshop it. We'd read it through and talk about it with Robert and dream about it a little bit. And then after the last time, Rick was like, all right, we're ready. And we started the process of raising the money for it. And then it got really, really serious.
Over the course of your career, you've acted and directed films about artists, and you covered some of the most famous movie stars, like The Last Movie Star, and then you're making a film about this renowned lyricist. Is there a through line between Blaze Foley, Lorenz Hart, Chet Baker, Paul and Joanne, Flannery O'Connor, all these artists that you noticed in exploring their lives in our cultural past?
It's really interesting. It wasn't deliberate. I guess because I started working so young and I've spent my entire life with other artists, it's just kind of that thing your high school writing teacher teaches you, right? What you know. These are worlds I have a real curiosity for. And I know people like Lorenz Hart. I've met people like Flannery O'Connor. I've met people like Blaze Foley or Seymour Bernstein or Maud Lewis. Like I've made a lot of work on artists. And I've also, I've also played cops and, I've done lots of different things, but this clearly is extremely interesting to me. Um, and I, I would love, I would love to have to be more varied, perhaps. But I gave myself permission a few years ago. I realized that I was kind of criticizing myself for this interest. And then I realized, well, one of my favorite filmmakers of all time is Bob Fosse, who all of his films are about artists, and they're all terrific. So you could make a strong case to be made that, all of us have creativity inside of us. Every single human being on this planet is born with the desire to create and manifest things in whatever capacity. So I think other people do relate to these stories. Um, and a well-told story, it doesn't matter if it's about a shoemaker. If you get into the details of it, I think a lot of us can learn from it.
Yeah. I mean, Fosse's so unapologetically even about himself
Yeah,
towards the, with all that jazz. He's just like, this is who I am.
that's who I
And
am.
um, the film is so great, and it's carried with these wonderful monologues that you have to perform. And there's also a physicality in the performance as well too as playing Larry with the height difference. Can you talk a little bit about your preparation to tackle this script and you and what you and Rick talked about? You know, maybe camera tricks or just your physical performance to play Larry.
Yeah, well, it starts with the text always, and we just read it over and over again. And we started to see that the whole movie really needed to feel like a Rodgers and Hart song. It should feel like one 90-minute Rodgers and Hart song, have the same melancholy, the same bittersweet taste, uh, the strange mix of profound and silly. Um, and it seemed obvious to us that his height was so important to his self-image and the way other people related to him that it wasn't an aspect of his character that we could ignore. And so then we started asking ourselves, well, all right, how would Buster Keaton have done this? You know that they could have done this in the 20s. How would they have done it? And I have this friend of mine, Latham Gaines, who's an actor and a toy inventor. He's one of the few people I knew. I told Rick, I said, there's only one person I know who thinks so outside the box about how to do things that he would know how to do this. And so we flew him out with us, and he worked with the set designers and the cinematographer and myself about body language, about building trenches, building platforms for other people, moving the paintings, moving the bar stools. It can't. It was. I've never in my life as an actor worked so completely with production design, cinematography, and costume. We all had to have big meetings about how this is going to work, and if I was going to have this kind of jacket, how would he move? It had to. And Rick just kind of had to absorb it all and make sure it was all consistent.
Yeah, and I mean, like you're also having to work within this iconic space. So and you're tackling these. I think I saw like you had like it written out in chunks for the monologues and stuff there as well too. Like, is that am I right about that? Is that you kind of
Yeah,
broke it down a little bit like that?
with a text this large, I learned this doing the Shakespeare plays. Like if you have to memorize Macbeth or something, it's incredibly daunting when you first
Hmm.
look at it. Like how, and you have to break it into small. I broke the movie into 13 acts, and I learned them all, and then I learned them all again, and then I would focus on, all right, let's get this one word perfect. Let's get this one word perfect. And it just makes it an achievable goal because when you first look at the whole thing, you're like, your brain would collapse. But if you said, all right, I'm just going to learn these 12 pages, that's doable, you,
Yeah,
you know, and that's how I approached it. But it
yeah,
did it took months.
yeah. No, I would assume so, but then it flows so effortlessly when in your performance. The film explores the closing of a chapter for Larry in his life as Oklahoma is about to launch this iconic partnership of Rogers and Hammerstein's. And over the course of the night, he's slowly coming to terms with that in his own way. Have you experienced that before, where you've consciously saw the end of your own chapter in your life or your career come to a close, and in retrospect, do those moments lead to finding empathy for Larry while he's there coming to terms with everything there?
You can't have a 30-year career in the entertainment business and not experience huge, what feel like huge swings on a roller coaster where you're on top of the world, it feels like, and then there's 2 years go by and you're passe. Everybody's interested in somebody else. And um, Rick used to have a funny thing. He thought the tagline for the poster should be forgotten but not gone. which is the way a lot of us, we've all felt that way at a certain party or a certain time in our life, whether it's with a lover or professionally. And artistically, it is strange. What is it that makes Richard Rodgers and Bob Dylan, have these epically long, creative, fulfilling careers and others not? And I've often thought about like what it would be like to be the world's greatest mandolin player the day Elvis broke.
Yeah.
When all of a sudden you've dedicated your life to playing the mandolin, and now nobody wants to hear that instrument. It's not popular. It's not, it sounds like something people don't want to hear. And the same thing can happen to a performer or a painter. You just become, I remember it was strange at the end of their career, Merchant Ivory, everybody took them so for granted. They would just kind of roll their eyes about another Merchant Ivory movie. And now they're gone, and I miss them completely, that level of excellence that they would provide. Uh, but people get interested. I got to work with Sidney Lumet at the end of his career. We made a wonderful movie called Before the Devil
Yeah.
Knows You're Dead that nobody cared about. It
I
was,
saw it. I saw
well,
it, Ethan.
I was so proud of the movie, but we couldn't buy a magazine article, about the movie. But it's funny, years later, people always ask me about that movie. So you
Yeah.
kind of have to trust that time is the great curator. I mean, Larry Hart is despondent on that night, but when you hear his list of credits, The Lady is a Tramp, Blue Moon, My Funny Valentine, he did write a handful of words that cheated death.
Mhm.
It- It's just his great enemy in truth was not society but himself,
Yeah.
and not the alcoholism may have helped temporarily, but it destroyed his life.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about chapters and closing, and like that just feels like when you're mentioning Merchant Ivory last year, we did an introspection on Tony Scott, and it feels like sections of films or types of films sort of don't get made anymore, right? Once those great artists have passed. And then for like Larry, songs like this don't get written anymore because they have such character and they have a distinct voice.
I'm dying this I listen to a lot of contemporary music, and I just want to send everybody the Rodgers and Hart songbook and go like, guys, what's the line I have in the movie? Demand more.
Yes. Yeah.
Demand more. We can be better. You know, because you listen to some of those lyrics, you can't believe how brilliant they are.
No.
The
No.
word choices, the sophisticated ideas at play, what they're trying to express. Um,
And how they relate even still now, like within everything. It's like that's why they're timeless, you know? And I wanted to ask you about, you're so great in this, but you're working with this really great ensemble around you with Bobby and Andrew and Margaret. I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts about working with this extraordinary trio and group of actors in this film.
well, I felt it's so you can have a chance, an opportunity to create a character like this, but if you do it in a vacuum, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If I don't have Margaret or Andrew or Bobby, the the whole movie wouldn't fall apart. It would fall apart. Each one of them has to carry the baton of this film, and they kind of move me around the racetrack, so to speak. And I was very aware of how lucky I was. I mean, I could focus on any of the three of them about how much they make the film.
Yeah. When you talked about with Rick before, you talked about a theme of, and I want to get this right, father time being this main character that's within the work that you guys are talking together. But that theme is actually quite tragic here, for Larry. And this is kind of like the first time I feel like you guys have talked about mortality and the lasting legacy and what artists leave behind. Did you guys, was that a lot of within the conversations as well too, about that this is a new chapter of talking about time within y'all's career? I mean, it's not like simply like we're going to make a movie about this, but it has to be when you look back on the piece that you're talking about time in a different way for the first time I feel in y'all's collaborations.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different to us. This is kind of Rick always called it a howl into the night.
Hmm.
And you can't help but think about, oh, we're living in a moment where a lot of the kinds of movies that made us want to be filmmakers are not getting made anymore. And so you can really, it's not hard to understand how Larry Hart might feel about the death of the jazz age. You know, like, yeah, there's something wonderful is coming. Rodgers and Hammerstein is coming. A whole new world of music is going to hit the airwaves. But for Larry Hart, who was dedicated to this other style of music, uh, it's gonna hurt. And and as you age, you become aware of what a short moment you have on the stage. You know, even if you get on the stage, it's
Hmm.
not going to last long. So I do think I find it, as Rick's friend, I was very aware he was making these two movies in the same year. And one is about the beginning of a career and one is about the end, you know.
Yes.
And Rick, these are first movies he's done about, I've done a lot of films about artists, but he hasn't. And these are his first two. And he sees them very much as speaking, one is pushing a new wave forward and one is the tide going out, tide coming in and the tide going out. And uh, it's it's clear we're at a different stage in our life, thinking
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. With that, I mean, you guys are part. When I was thinking of watching the film, I was thinking about Nouvelle Vague, and I was thinking about how Slacker and Dazed and Confused and the Before Trilogy were this new wave of filmmaking for me and for so many people and for yourself. I mean, it was such an important time in both your and Rick's career. And now, hearing you talk about the making of this film, talking about trying to get the money made and how it's different. The system is different. The way we make independent cinema is different. The
Completely.
audience seeing it could be very different. Do you are there artists and filmmakers or type of films that you're seeing out there that still do inspire you and hope that are carrying the spirit from you guys
So
from the
many,
old days?
a handful of amazing people that even in Hollywood are making remarkable, punk rock movies. I mean, Wes Anderson and Quentin, and I mean, there's this Spike, and there's so many people that manage to have a voice and make what you call independent cinema within the system. And I'm in awe of that. Uh, it is at the same time, it's fascinating to me. Like, you could never get a movie like Gattaca made at a studio today.
No.
That just wouldn't happen. Before Sunrise was a studio movie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that those kinds of movies that drew me in to wanting to be an actor, those jobs exist on the fringes of the
Yeah.
profession now. And it's very difficult to find an audience. When they're spending $150 million on movies all the time, it's like, and then they spend $40 million on advertising. I mean, it's just incredibly hard to compete in the psychology of the audience.
Yeah.
It's a, it, but the, it's a weird balance, I think, as an artist that you have to keep, which is it's a razor's edge to walk. You have to be both extremely flexible and limber to change, and you also have to um, be committed to your definition of excellence, and let the paths fast pass by, and let time be the curator. As long as you get to work, you get an opportunity to work. Um, we made this movie very frugally, and hopefully it'll be financially responsible because of that. And so that feels good.
Yeah, no, it is good. I love the film. I'm so happy that you and Rick got to work together again. It's hopefully not too long in between the next go rounds, right?
I hope so
Hopefully.
too. I hope so too. We're working hard to make sure it happens more quickly this time.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Ethan, it's so wonderful to talk to you again. Best of wishes with the rest of your year and stay safe out there, man.
Yeah, you too. Appreciate your time. Thanks for the intelligence. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, as always.